This is the first day of this November 1984 7-day retreat. There were a couple of things which I forgot to mention last night in the opening talk. One is that if anyone wishes, rather than facing wall or window side, to face inward into the aisle, that is perfectly all right. Some people have tried it in the past and find that that kind of sitting, at least at times, is better. Only that in that case, you cannot be struck with a stick. The other thing is that, as you have already noticed, those of you who haven't been to retreat for a while, is that we don't use the bell anymore to signal ending and beginning of meeting, what was called the Doksan bell. When the meeting is finished, just open the door to the waiting line and leave the door to the meeting room open. This also means that ending the meeting is the responsibility of both of us. If one feels the meeting is over, then just to get up and leave. In listening to a talk, I forgot another thing. Mentioning the possibility of not coming to the hall here for a round of sitting, but to do whatever one needs to do. I think we mentioned resting or walking. You can also sit in another place if you want to sit by yourself or in a smaller room. There is a living room in the little house called Wayside across the river. And there are 2 mats there and cushions. So you're welcome to sit over there if there's the need to sit by yourself. You could also sit in Crouch Hall or in one of the cabins, but it's colder there. Or any place in the woods or field, on the bench near the river, near the lake. Sitting here for a talk, find the most comfortable posture. There are enough cushions available to prop oneself up. And if that posture becomes uncomfortable, painful, rather than sticking with the pain and the attention and energy going into that, change it. Because listening takes all of one's energy. Change the posture quietly, so that sound and movement don't create a disturbance. There still will be sound and movement, but it doesn't disturb if it comes out of attention and care. In listening to a talk, and there have been many talks, is it possible to listen to this one, not remembering previous ones? If similar or same words are used and one falls into the memory groove, then that's not listening. It is just sort of reciting with what one is hearing from memory. And that is a narrow band. In listening, can there be the openness of no comparison? Comparison with what one would like to hear or doesn't want to hear? No resistance, in other words? Is that possible? To listen without resistance? Which doesn't mean to accept what is being said. No resistance doesn't mean acceptance. It just means listening without knowing. Looking at what is being said directly within oneself, because somehow or other it always refers to what is happening in oneself, not in somebody else, in other people or in ancient people, or more fortunate people or less fortunate people. We always talk about the human mind, which is our mind. Not the personal idiosyncrasies, but what is basic and fundamental, and in need to be seen so it doesn't run us automatically, robot-like. From pleasure to sorrow and back to pleasure and back to sorrow. If there's something that doesn't make sense at all, can't be seen, or seems to be false, not right on, bring it up in meetings, and we'll look at it. Start from scratch, maybe find better words. If you're afraid you're going to forget it, write it down afterwards. But it's helpful not to carry it around during the whole talk. Then the rest of the talk will pass one by. Today, we'll take a koan from the Blue Cliff record. And the case reads like this. Yunmen was a Zen teacher, the 8th century or 9th century. Yunmen imparted some words saying, "Everyone has a light. When you look at it, you don't see it. It's dark and dim. What is everybody's light?" He himself answered on their behalf, "The kitchen pantry and the main gate." He also said, "A good thing isn't as good as no thing or nothing." There's another translation which says everyone has this inner light. If you try to look at it, you can't see it. It's dark, fuzzy, dim. What is everybody's light, or everybody's inner light? If one hears that being said by what one has heard was a great Zen teacher, maybe one has never heard his name before, but after all this is a famous collection of koans, maybe one has never heard of that before, that much the better. So someone says, everybody has this light. What happens if one hears that statement being said? Does one feel some sense of elation, a good feeling, sort of a glimmer of hope? If everybody has it, maybe then I have it too. Maybe then I can find it, come upon it. If I only work hard enough, that maybe the next thought, or the next thought maybe, how can I get it? If I have it, it must be reachable, findable. How can I reach it? Hearing someone say everybody has this inner light may give one a boost of energy, a real good feeling, hope, looking forward to that day at which one finds this light, turns it on, never to turn it off again. One may want to hear more from that person who said that, be close to him or her, maybe make a few offerings to him or her to keep those words coming. Maybe worship that person, because it has forever been simpler for human beings to worship a person who says beautiful things than to find out the truth of them oneself. Not to buy it, not to reject it, but to find out whether this is so. Much simpler to put someone on a throne. Make offerings and worship, and become one of the followers within a community of followers. This is what has taken place in human history throughout the ages. It is still taking place, and this is why we have these many different religious communities, each one gathered around their holy one. There comes often then a feeling of exclusivity. Mine is the best, the truest, and division. Often it doesn't just remain with simple division, there comes mutual tensions, rivalry. Often religious groups have accumulated a lot of wealth from these offerings. There's envy then and jealousy of others, less endowed human beings who envy the wealth of this group. Oneself, this can all be observed in oneself as well as in what goes on around one. because one's mind is not different from those minds that are engaged right now in open strife, struggle, terrorism, war. Or is one's mind different? Is one free of all that? Free of identification, of belonging, of exclusivity, of division, divisive identification with anything? Has one dropped it freely? If not, it needs to be watched and observed and seen very clearly, openly, frankly, honestly, without fear of losing it. Or if that fear comes up, can that be penetrated? It's so heart-rending to see over the news how what was called innocent people, innocent because they had not been involved in the particular assassination of the Hindu prime minister, were now being taken revenge upon. They were of the same sect as the assassins, and yet had not participated in it. Some of the faces of the people who were interviewed were those of rather kind and peaceful-looking old men, all of them with turbans, easily identifiable. That which gives one one's pride and one's exclusivity becomes the mark, the target for attack, for those who don't belong and feel the need of taking revenge. The fear and anxiety in these old men with turbans that there may be unending violence after this violent act of one of their own. Revenge. And yet, it doesn't occur to us to take those turbans off, to drop one's identification. One of the commentators said this is a typically Indian thing. Has happened in India since for millennia, and this is an unsolvable problem here between Sikhs and Hindus, and it's been between Muslims and Hindus. It's insoluble, and it will flare up, and if the flames are put down by force, it will keep on simmering. But it is not a typically Indian problem. It's just as insoluble in, for instance, Ireland, where Irish and English, Catholics and Protestants are forever terrorizing each other. It is unending if not one stops putting it all down completely. It usually happens, one may think, I'll put it down, but you first. How can I put it down if they don't? Then I'll be in a worse position. Will one be in a worse position? And does it matter whether it's worse? Worse from what point of view? As long as fragmentation, division, separation exists, there will be unending sorrow among human beings. It's so clear that all that needs to be done is detect the division and what brings it about and put that down. Be done with it. Freely, effortlessly. You could say, well, you say this so simply. It is a very, very complex matter. It is, because we're so conditioned to adhere, to follow, and connected with dropping a faith or an affiliation is the fear of being condemned, or the hope of being saved, our personal salvation or damnation, seems to hinge, we think, on perpetuating our beliefs and affiliations. And we're afraid. We're afraid to stand alone, afraid of being an outcast or losing what we believe will be our salvation. But it's all belief, assumptions, based on what we've heard, what has been programmed into the mind by our parents and teachers, and by what we ourselves have read. There's this tremendous fear of standing alone, and yet we are alone. We're so surrounded by dividing walls that the pain of loneliness is one of the severest pains that human beings are suffering. Can one begin, as this retreat begins, freshly with every round, with every moment, not to take anything for granted anymore in one's beliefs and assumptions, what one clings to, what one is afraid to? Wonder who and what one is, or what everything is, without any belief, any assumption, any knowledge about it. Coming freshly in touch with life, which is our innermost essence, is life. And life is not divided. Thought divides. So in hearing this statement, everyone has this inner light. It does give one a good feeling, or maybe a feeling of despair. Someone may say, I've tried for 15 years to find this light. I give up. Well then, can one give up? May not be possible. The urge to find out whether there is such a thing as wholeness, undivided truth, may not let go of one. But one has to be very careful not to make an imagined thing out of this inner light and then try to reach for that and skip over what is actually happening in the kitchen pantry and in the main gate. I don't know why he chose the kitchen pantry. He was talking to monks, and not just for monks, but for anybody. The kitchen pantry is a pretty important place. It's the hub of nourishment, without which we can't live. It's also a place where one likes to satisfy one's greed. Steal in there and get as much of a handful of this or that as one can. Taking that the kitchen pantry there in a monastery is not a free for all. Maybe it was, don't know. It's a place where people work, storing things, maintaining things, taking things out, keeping things in order. it's one of the workplaces of a monastery. So if one widens the scope of this, one can say the place of work, one's daily place of work. And the main gate is where one comes and goes, inside and out. In other words, does one already have an idea where this inner light is, where it will be found, or will one have no assumption at all? And yet question in all openness, and not just on the mat. But as one gets up, goes to the dining room, goes to the place of work, goes for a walk, or lies down, can the questioning, the attending, the listening be there, at least at times, at moments? Of course it can. It comes on its own if there is a real serious concern with the way one lives, the way human beings live throughout the world, in strife, in division, separation, and such difficulty or impossibility of relationship. And realizing one is one of those human beings. Is there an inner light? What is this inner light? What is everybody's light? One translation says everyone has his own light, his or her own light. Own, not meaning it's mine, it belongs to me and not to you. Own meaning I can't borrow it from anybody else. No one can give it to me, can switch it on for me. It doesn't mean ownership, because ownership, mine, to hold, to keep, to exclusively use, all of that is the darkness in which we live. The darkness of self-centeredness, this word not being said in any judgmental sense. We are self-centered. That is very easily to observe in one's sitting and daily life, particularly in a retreat when there's so little impositions from the outside, to become very clear about this self-centeredness, which is no light, it's darkness. The darkness of a very narrow little track or cell, as somebody put it this morning, a prison. Tight. And yet I don't want, and self-pity involved in it. If something goes wrong, feeling victimized by others. And then the question, how can I break out of this prison? That's what this person asked. But wanting to break out of the prison is wanting to have a better state, which one dreams about or has heard about. And it is just the same self-centeredness in action, wanting something. Or thought. Let's put the word self-centeredness aside. One feels so bad about it. Cannot be objective and factual about it, although it'd be very good to become very factual about this. There's been so much blame and self-flagellation around this self-centeredness, or justification for it. That is a loaded term. Self-centeredness is thoughts, images about oneself and the defense of oneself. wanting to be somebody at all cost, even if it is wanting to be nobody. It's still wanting to be nobody. How can I become nobody? One can't become it. Something completely different has to come into being, which is attention, awareness, or listening without any position taken. Here in this text, at some place, it talks about a tree that doesn't cast a shadow in this light. When a tree doesn't cast a shadow in the light of sun, it means the sun has to be all around it, not in one particular position. Embracing it completely from all sides, which means from no special side. Can there be this kind of awareness or listening, looking into oneself wholly, not with a waggling finger or with a rationalization? Well, I do this, of course, because of such and such. Then one is already removed from what is happening. Explanations of causes aren't the thing itself as it happens, as it's happening. In one's daily life, how does one work in the kitchen, pantry, or at the office, in the household, wherever one works and interrelates with people? We talk so much about it, and yet most of the time one gets so involved in the activity, the tensions that happen in interrelationship. Where is the awareness then? Where is it right now? When one speaks of the main gate, listening inwardly to pain or frustration, anger or boredom, or the involvement in pleasurable memories, pleasurable thoughts. Can that all be listened to without getting completely lost, completely involved in it? Just as one listens to the sounds outside without getting completely lost in them, in the purity. there is such a purity of perception where there's no thought, no judgment, no wanting or expecting. Listening inwardly, or questioning or attending inwardly is no different from attending outwardly. It's the same awareness, the same listening. How quickly we react. I don't like this, I don't want this, I want something else. Can that be listened to, heard in its total movement? Because it's not just a mental movement, it is very physical at the same time. Because every thought, every single thought is wired to our total organism, to the organs and glands and muscles, nerves. And all of that is open to hearing, feeling, seeing. With no one there wanting to change it. Wanting to change it, can that be seen? The wanting, what is wanting? This whole movement of wanting, can it come into awareness nakedly? Not our projected goals of what we want. If we get lost in that, we are lost in thought, in imagination, in feelings. And the wanting itself is not attended to. Here, Umwan says, the more you try, when you try to look at it, you don't see it. It is dark and dim. Is he saying that the trying itself is the darkness and dimness? And people say, well, how can I do any of this work if I don't try? What does trying mean? Trying means I already have an idea of what I should do. That's what one person said this morning. There's always a underground feeling that I should be doing something. And it expresses itself in vague tensions. I should be doing something. Can that itself be clear, be seen, without any interpretation of it? Trying has to do with what I think I should be doing. Can't quite remember, but I've been told all my life what I should be doing. This is why I respond like this. I should be doing something now. It gives one a dim and murky feeling. That itself, can it reveal itself for what it is? As the most precious thing to be observed? To be? Precious not to evaluate it, but to give total attention to it. Total meaning without holding back any reservations about it and not being good or being unpleasant hoping it will soon go away. This is all reservation. It all dims the awareness and darkens it with one's own preferences, one's old habitual preferences. Awareness which has no preferences, no motive to get rid of what comes into awareness or keep it going. No motive at all, because motive is detected and put aside. Such awareness is light, not the light of fireworks, strobe light. It's the clarity of no division, no separation. And no goal beyond. A goal beyond is thought and imagination. Awareness is not imagination. It is what is, right now, this instant, happening within and without, perceived purely. Is that possible? Or is the reaction so quick, I don't want it, I must keep it? Maybe quick. So what? Let the awareness shine on it. Or let it be seen. The reaction, the instant reaction. It's never too late, because in this whole thing there is no time. Each moment is absolutely new and fresh and not in time. And it can wipe away what happened before instantly. Listen. Put the words aside, wind and trees and fall and leaves. Put it aside and listen again. Not to hear something, but it's there. Does one realize that attending, listening, questioning can never be for a thing in the future? That's thought. That it can only be now? What is now? Not the word. If you put the words away, then you don't know. We want to know, because then we feel at ease and safe. But this work is not to provide ease and safety. All the ease and safety we provide ourselves with in our daily life by knowing is not ease and safety. It brings us into constant complications, contradictions, and problems. So why keep it up here? Why not open it up to inspection? How is it if I don't know what something is and just plumb into it? Which means the mind must shrink to nothing but a quiet spot. A spot of quietness, which is not even a spot. Nothing but the listening, nothing but the questioning, nothing but the attending. Here in this book, under the commentary, it says, "This matter is not in the eye, or in the ear, or in the environment. To begin to understand, you must cut off knowing, forget gain and loss, be pure, naked, and perfectly at ease, and everyone must investigate on his own." Can one do that? We will end here for today.